Yep, here we're live again. This next chapter is a little bit shorter. There's Riv in the background enjoying the heat of the fire. I guess I should have turned my cell phone off. I don't know, my buddy there just kind of made a comment that just, whatever. So I found reading for me has, well, as much as I say it takes my mind off my worries and my problems and the things I think about, it's even difficult when I'm reading at times because my thoughts will come into my mind. That's Stretchy Bill down there on the floor too. But yeah, maybe I can get the dog in there a little bit. I don't know. Yeah. Jeez. I just saw, guys, his stick is, I guess I can't get the dog in there. His stick is making old pictures of mobsters move. Okay, so I'm not going to complain. I'm not going to bitch. I'm just going to read because I don't even want to think in my real world right now. It's just so irritating. Like I just even yesterday with my stupid truck. Anyways, I just don't even want to think about it. I got to deal with that, I guess. Namaste, man. So this is chapter 10, page 191. And it's called Stippo. The story of Stippo's liquor store is a classic example of how the media latches onto a false story and runs with it, never letting the true facts get in the way of a good story. This had all the elements of a terrific crime story: a hard-working, law-abiding young husband and his adoring wife, their two beautiful, innocent little daughters, a highly successful liquor store, and two ferocious mobsters who threatened the lives of this perfect family in order to seize the store. The trouble is, except for the innocent little girls, every other detail of the story is a lie, and I said as much under oath. Here is the true story, the one happily ignored by the media for more than 20 years. In the fall of 1983, Stippo, whose real name was Stephen Rakes, and his wife Julie Miskell Rakes were given money by his parents to buy a run-down Texaco gas station at 295 Old Colony Avenue near St. Monica's Church. The Rakes' plans were to turn the gas station with its two service bays into a liquor store. Shortly after that, Stippo purchased a liquor license at auction for $5,000, which he transferred to 295 Old Colony Avenue. Although he planned on opening Stippo's Liquor Mart on Thanksgiving, it didn't open until a week or two before Christmas. Local liquor stores in South Boston shared an unwritten understanding that liquor would be marked up 33%, while wine would go up 50%. Prices of beer would run all the same across the board. There might be a 25-cent difference here or there, but basically the prices were pretty level. However, when Stippo opened the door, he was undercutting everyone, only marking everything up 5%. Shortly after he opened Stippo's Liquor Mart, Stippo started receiving bomb and death threats. Someone was calling up the store, threatening Stippo, his wife, his father, who was a friend of mine, saying they were going to blow the place up and kill them all. At the time, Jimmy and I already opened our bar at F and 2nd Streets. Originally called the Old Time Tavern, which we'd renamed Courts Inn. Stippo's sister Mary, who was a friend of mine and Jimmy's, came down to the bar one Friday afternoon and asked me if Jimmy was there. When I told her he would be in shortly, she said she was supposed to meet him there. After he came in, what a fucking joke! I tell you, sometimes I just can't get the thoughts out of my mind of things that piss me off. Sorry, like it's almost like a Tourette feeling sometimes that I just want to explode and like just say what I feel, what's infuriating me. Things remind me of things that bother me too when I read. Asked me if Jimmy was there. When I told her he would be in shortly, she said she was supposed to meet him there. After he came in, the two of them sat down in a booth and had a conversation. Then he called me over and told Mary, "Don't worry, I'll take care of it." After Mary left, Jimmy explained to me about the death threats Stippo and his family were getting. Jimmy and I both liked Mary and her father and mother, who were good people. So we left the bar and went down to the liquor store to talk to Stippo. His father was down there, but his wife Julie was home. Apparently, Stippo told us she was scared about receiving the threats and didn't want to be down there anymore. Jimmy said we look into it and find out who was doing it and make it stop. When we asked him if he had any idea where the threats might be coming from, he said no, but he did tell us that he had previously been partners in a liquor store at Dorchester and West 9th with the Luongo brothers, and it might have been them. After Jimmy and I left Stippo's store, we went to the package store owned by Luongo and talked to the two of the three brothers who were there. After a 45-minute conversation, we were convinced the Luongo brothers had nothing to do with the bomb threats, but they were open about the fact that they didn't like Stippo and there had been bad feelings or hard feelings when they had parted ways. They also told us Stippo had been stealing money off them and had previously tried to buy a liquor store on the same block as their store. The Luongo said that when the owner refused to sell it to him, the store had mysteriously burned down. There was no doubt that Stippo did not have a good reputation in town and that more than one piece of property he had owned went up in flames. He'd even been investigated by the arson squad, although nothing ever came of it. But still, it was clear that the Luongo brothers, despite their dislike of Stippo, had not made the bomb threats. After we left the Luongos, Jimmy and I decided to go our separate ways for supper and meet later in the evening. On his way home, Jimmy drove up to Perkins Square and went into the Bayview Liquor, a store owned by the Berries. When I met Jimmy later, he informed me that the people there didn't know anything about the bomb threats. During the week, the two of us went to a couple of other places, but we couldn't make any headway. No one we talked to knew anything about any bomb threats or death threats. The following Monday afternoon, Jimmy and I were driving down Andrew Square when an old friend of Jimmy's yelled out, "Hey, Sonny," using an old nickname Jimmy had once since he'd been a kid. Jimmy pulled over and introduced me to Domi Musico, who owned a liquor store and also a bar near Andrew Square. Fucking irritating with that, I tell you, man. Stupid thing. I don't know how to like turn it off, so I get tired of it all. During the week, the two of us went to a couple of other places, but yeah, see, I'm reading the same. Hey, Sonny, yeah, Domi Musical, who own a liquor store and also a bar near Andrew Square, not far from where Tippo had opened the store, or his store. Jesus, I tell you, it just, there's Yui, my beautiful dog. He's getting a little older now. It's kind of worrisome. He's in good shape, though. Okay, I'm going to calm down and carry on. We were talking small talk for a little while when, out of the clear, Dobby said, "So, do you believe that cocksucker Stippo opening up and undercutting everybody, but that's all right? I keep calling him up and telling him I'm going to blow the place up and kill them all." Jimmy and I looked at each other and started laughing. We had just stumbled onto it. Then Jimmy looked at Dommy and said, "Dommy, you can't do that. His father is a friend of Kevin's." Even this isn't. This is a short one, though. "I'm not going to do anything," Dommy said, "but I want that cocksucker to have some restless nights that I've had." "Don't do anything," Jimmy told him again. "I won't do anything," Dommy promised Jimmy. "I just hate him." Later that evening, we went back to Stippo's and told him we had found out who was making the threats and that he didn't have any, he wouldn't have any more problems. "It's all taken care of," Jimmy assured him. Stippo was pleased and thanked us, and that was the end of it, or so we thought. The following week after Christmas, Mary came down to Courts Inn and sat in a booth with Jimmy again. After they had been talking for a while, Jimmy called me over. "Stippo wants to sell the liquor mart," he told me. "He wants to know if we're interested. A legitimate business wouldn't be a bad idea. What do you think?" Mary was still there, but I said, "It doesn't hurt to listen." That night, Jimmy and I went down to Stippo's. He and Jimmy started talking, but Stippo didn't want to talk in front of his wife, who was down at the store at the time. He asked us to meet him later at his house on East 4th Street. I knew the house well from when I used to visit its former owner, Marty McDonough, a high school hockey referee who worked as a liquor store salesman and was a real nice guy, a legitimate guy. Later that evening, when Jimmy and I went up to his house, Stipple told us he wanted to sell the business, that he needed to get out, that it was too much for him, and that he was in over his head, basically working on a 5% markup. He'd only had the place 3 weeks, but he couldn't keep it going any longer. I set up another meeting with him for the next night, which I would go over the books with him. When I went to his house for the second meeting, he showed me the books. Then I met him again, this time with Kevin O'Neill, who was in the liquor business. Even though I had a bar, Kevin had been in the business much longer than I had. On my fourth visit, Jimmy and I went to Stippo's house, and the three of us agreed on a price of $100,000 for the store, along with a note Stippo would carry for $25,000 to make it look legit. The $100,000 cash, the $25,000 on paper. When Jimmy and I were leaving Stippo's house that night, Jimmy said, "You know, Stevie, it's going to want a part of it." Stevie is going to want a part of this. I have no problem with that, I told him. The night we were going to give Stippo that night we were going to give Stippo the money. I brought 30,000 in cash to Teresa's house, all $100 bills. Jimmy took the 30,000 in hundreds downstairs and came back up with 30,000 in 20s and 10s, having replaced my money with his. Obviously, he wanted to keep the hundreds for himself. Then he took 70,000 from him and Stevie and put that in a brown paper bag along with my 30,000, and we went to Stippo's. I don't have a clear recollection as to whether or not Stevie was with us that night, but when we got to the house, Stippo let us in, and we sat down at the dining room table. Stippo's two little girls were running around the house, and then one came over to us. Jimmy picked her up and put her on his knee, commenting on how pretty she was. As soon as the money was on the table, Jimmy told Stippo to count on it, or to count it. At that point, Stippo turned around and said, "I don't know about this. My wife doesn't really want to sell." He started hemming and hawing, but knowing Stippo the way I did, it seemed clear to me that he was trying to shake us down for more money. But what he wanted was for us to sweeten the pot. I think he figured that since we were so interested in the store, he could get more money out of us. Here we had already agreed on a selling price, and he was trying at the last moment to get more money out of us. But it wasn't happening. We agreed on this price, Jimmy told him. The money is here, and you're not getting any more out of us. With that, I took a gun out of my belt and put it on the table. His daughter, who was sitting on Jimmy's lap, reached over and touched the handle of the gun. Jimmy pushed the gun back over to me and told me to put it away, removing Stippo's daughter from his knee and letting her stand up on the floor. Stippo then called his sister-in-law, who was babysitting, and told her to take the kids into the kitchen. Once the kids were gone, we started talking, and the tone wasn't pleasant. "Listen," Jimmy told Stippo, "we had a deal. We agreed upon a price, and now you are trying to get more money out of us. You were the one who came to us to buy the store. We didn't come to you." Finally, Stippo agreed, and Jimmy told him to count the money. Stippo took the 100,000 and counted 10 stacks of 10,000 each, made up with 2 stacks of 5,000 each, one by one. We counted the money too, and then Stippo put 25,000 off to the side and put the remaining 75,000 back in the bag. After we shook hands, we had him give us the keys to the store right then. Knowing Stippo as well as we did, we wanted those keys that night so he couldn't go to the store and remove some of the stock before we got there the next day. Then we made arrangements to meet him there the next morning when he would show us how to work the alarm and open the store. He had told us there was approximately $65,000 in stock in the store, and that he had paid for the walk-in chest, the electrical work, all the construction. The next morning, we met him there and opened for business shortly afterward. In January of 1984, changing the name to Rotary Liquors. For the next 3 days, Stippo came down to help out, showing me how to run the place and introducing me to the salesmen who were coming in. Then he informed me that he and his wife were taking the 2 kids to Disney World for 2 weeks. They really seem to like Disney World for whatever reason. After Stippo left, I had Kevin O'Neill come down to the store and go over the stock with me, showing me which beers and wines sold and those for which was no there was no big demand. While he was there, I told him that I didn't think there was really $65,000 worth of stock in here. What you have to do is get the beverage journal, Kevin told me. Then you need to take an inventory of everything you have in the store, match it against the prices of in the book and the post off. Since when you buy stuff in quantities, you get discounts. Then you'll know how much stock you have. After I did all that, I realized there was only 35,000 to 38,000 in stock. Definitely not 65,000 Stippo had claimed. Then the bills started coming in for from the liquor distributors. It appeared that Stippo hadn't paid any of them. So the second week I was there, I had to come up with 47,000 in cash out of my pocket to pay the bills. Not only had Stippo lied about how much stock was there, but he had walked out with the first 3 weeks' receipts of approximately $33,000 at 2133, I said, and never replaced the stock. Next, the salesman from Lennox Martel came in looking for payment on the walk-in chest. Shortly after that, Murphy Electric, who did the electric work, asked for the money from their work, followed by Brian Burke, who did the construction, was also looking for his money. I soon realized that Stippo hadn't paid for much of anything except the $5,000 license for the store. Approximately a week later, Jimmy and I started hearing ridiculous stories about Stippo and us. According to these reports, Stippo was dead. We had threatened to kill him. We had hung him over the bridge, and we had stuck a gun in his daughter's mouth. All kinds of lies were circulating around town. His own sister, Mary, had come down to the store to tell us about them, but we had already heard them. Mary got Stippo's number in Florida, and we called him from the store. When I told him about everything that was being said, he told me he'd be back in 2 weeks. I told him he had to come back soon and put those rumors to rest. When I let Jimmy know Stippo would be back in 2 weeks, he took the phone and said, "Get back now." He also said we'd pay for his airline flight up and back. 2 days later, Stippo came back without his family. Jimmy and I met him, and the three of us stood in front of the liquor store for an hour so people could drive by and see him. Then we drove up to Perkins Square, and we stood out front there talking with Stippo, so again, people driving by could see him. We offered to give him the money for the flight back, but he said, "No, I've got it," and wouldn't take it. He went back to Florida, and that we thought was the end of it. However, when Stippo returned from Florida, the stories persisted. According to our friends, Julie's sister was telling everyone that we had threatened her sister's family. The story that got us maddest was the one that we had stuck a gun in the little girl's mouth. We would never harm a child. I had a son of my own, and Jimmy would never do anything like that. So Jimmy and I drove Stippo over to Saltonstall building where his sister-in-law worked. He called her outside and basically told her to shut her mouth. But things got even more stirred up when Julie went to her uncle, Joe Lundbaum, a Boston cop, and told him the same thing, the lies that we had threatened to kill Stippo. Yet the truth was that we had never approached Stippo. He had approached us. But Joe Lundbaum went to the FBI and John Connolly, who told Jimmy what Stippo was saying and that his wife had gone to her uncle because of the lies Stippo had told her. The one thing Stippo had not told his wife was that he had reached out to us. He did tell her, however, that he only got 67,000 when he really got 100,000. Jimmy and I never blamed Julie for any of this. She was only repeating the lies her husband had told her. John Connolly told Joe Lundbaum that Julie and Stipple would have to get wired up. Stipple was afraid of being wired up because he knew that when he started talking to us, he would have to lie to verify the story he had told his wife. Once he started a conversation with a lie, we would have been on our guard and would have known something wasn't right. If he told us nonsense while he was wired, we would have said, "What are you talking about?" And it would have come out that he was a liar. Even though John Connolly, acting yet again as the FBI agent, that Jimmy was paying for information involving us, had told us what was going on that with Lindblom, we never we never acted on it, and we never killed Stipple because the whole incident finally died down. After things quieted down, Joe Lundblom and his partner Bob Ryan used to hang around the liquor store trying to catch up or catch us doing something illegal. Even though he couldn't do that, Lundbaum did manage to bring me up on charges involving the fight with the kids from Weymouth outside the liquor store. Although I continued to run the liquor store and the situation did go away, Jimmy and I got a lot of unwanted and unnecessary notoriety because of all the inaccuracies in the press. The media played the story as if Stipple was the victim, and they were able to reach millions of readers and listeners a day with that lie. Basically, there was nothing we could do about that. How many people could we talk to in a day? There was no way we could defend ourselves against the press. A short time later, Stipple opened a jewelry store with his wife and father-in-law on East Broadway, which, unbeknownst to the two of them, was selling hot jewelry. Some of the thieves had already come down to me and asked me to sell this stuff, but I told them I had nowhere to sell it and didn't buy it from them. So they had all gone to Stippo's store. Stippo's father, James, continued to come to the liquor store every day to see me. There was no doubt he disliked his own son and blamed him for remortgaging and forcing them out of the house that he and his wife had lived in on Jenkins Street. Still, James told me how he and his wife had a meeting with their other kids and made them all promise never to do anything to Stippo so long as they were alive. Stippo's own family hated him. Both in 1991 and in 1995, when the federal government was looking to indict Jimmy and me, Stippo got called in front of a federal grand jury. Both times he actually told the truth about what happened, saying that he was the one who wanted to sell the place to Jimmy and that he had asked Jimmy and me if we were interested in buying it. Unfortunately, Julie told the opposite story, the one he gave her about the gun and their kid. I mean, he did put the gun on the table, though, for whatever stupid reason, I guess to intimidate him. passing along the lie that about how we had extorted Stippo. Again, it wasn't her fault. That was the only story uh, she knew. By then, the two of them had gotten divorced and lost the jewelry store, and there was bitter fighting between them. Ultimately, in May of 1996, Stippo got indicted for 5 counts of perjury and 2 counts of obstruction of justice. He was telling the truth, but by then it was too late. Just before he went to trial on those charges, Stipple came down to the variety store looking to borrow money off of me. He said he needed to pay $750,000 to his lawyer. That was an outright lie, but it didn't matter. I gave him shit. If he'd told the truth to his wife in the first place, neither he nor I would have been in a difficult position then. I should have listened when members of his family had told me, Kevin, be careful around him. You never know what he's going to do. After Stippo was found guilty of perjury and he was awaiting sentencing, he made a deal with the government, cooperating against Whitey and me. This time, he told them the story he told his wife, 99% of which was a lie. The only truth to his story was the fact that the gun was on the table when he was trying to shake us down for more money. Because I had put that gun on the table, the government charged me with racketeering. One of the 29 charges leveled against me in my racketeering indictment in 1999. They said the presence of the gun showed we were extorting Stippo. In truth, however, he was extorting us, trying to get more money out of us. Yeah, whatever. If Stippo had originally gone in front of the grand jury and kept his mouth shut, the most they could have gotten him with was the duration of the grand jury, minus the time it was already sitting. Being the stand-up kid that everyone knew him to be, he would have gotten 18 months. But instead, he decided to cooperate with the government. As it turned out, he got probation and never went to jail. I guess the 18 months was too much for him. So what? So was it extortion or not? Because the gun was put on the table, the government said yes. But knowing Stippo the way I and everyone else did, I knew he was trying to get more money out of us, and there was no way that was going to happen. Still, in the end, the media continued to portray Stippo as the poor victim. Yet, if anyone was the victim, based on the lies that were told to her, it was his wife. None of us ever held her responsible for anything. Julie filed a $28.5 million civil case against us in 2002, but it was dismissed. In the end, Stippo did get $100,000 from us for the sale, plus $8,000 of the $25,000 note. I didn't pay him the complete $25,000 because he had lied about what he owed. But it was his other lies that the media ran with, ignoring the fact that he did not have the best reputation in town, a fact that we knew from the very beginning. They also ignored the fact that we had no intentions of buying a legitimate business, that we had our own bar, which was enough for us. Even the maroon Dodge Caravan that Stipple bought was a part of the media lie. The press said we bought him the car to get him out of town, but he bought it himself with the money he got from the sale of the property. Both of Stippo's sisters, Trish and Mary, gave interviews to the Boston Herald in April of 2005, concurring with that Stippo was in debt over his head and had come to us for help. Stippo couldn't even get beer for the store, Trish told the investigators and reporters from the Herald. He owed every liquor store distributor in the city. At least one paper got something right. One other little detail should be mentioned. After all this happened, Stipo's younger brother, Joseph, married my sister, Karen. He's a great guy. So much for the family being afraid of us. That's that. Next chapter is media lies, but it's probably pretty long, so I think I'm going to call her on that one. That was a little bit of a short one, 35 minutes. And anybody who follows Whitey Bulger's story, they would know about this Stipo guy, because when you just watch those little documentaries there, you often see the woman, right, at the liquor store being interviewed, and now we know the story. How about that? That's interesting, because that's viewed as real still, as real, as any of this. So that's it. That's another chapter from Kevin Weeks' his book Brutal, the untold story of his life inside Whitey Bulger's Irish mob. All right, and I don't think I'm going to be reading any more today. We had no one join us on this one, and no thumbs up, so I'm going to continue on because I'm going to finish this book regardless. And then, as announced previously, we're moving on to J. Dobbins' No Angel. Thanks for joining me.